This is the Authentic Change Podcast, and I am Mike Horne. Authenticity reflects what we want from each other and our organizations: open communication, trust, community, fun, and opportunity. I want to help you to do your best in your personal and professional relationships. This podcast delivers expertise, insights, and approaches on authentic leadership, to live your purpose, to lead from your values, to establish connected relationships, to steward people and culture change, to build and sustain prosperity, and to open doors and possibilities. This podcast will assist you in paving the way forward to personal, team, and organizational prosperity. Welcome to this edition of Authentic Change with Mike Horne. I am absolutely delighted, excited, and fascinated to have in the virtual studio today Dr. Darya Funches, who is a transformation expert who works at transformation for individuals, organizations, leaders, and their communities to reach their greatest potential. And what couldn't be a better fit for the Authentic Change audience than someone who brings this unique skill set and is an ally in helping people and positive systems reach their greatest potential. If you want to know about getting breakthrough results, Dr. Darya Funches provides that. She is the president and founder of REAP, REAP Unlimited, and has among the accomplishments in her career as chair, board member of the Organization Development Network, the National Training Labs, NTL, a longtime faculty member at American University. And it is just a delight for me to call Darya both a mentor and a friend. And I am so delighted to have you, Dr. Darya Funches. Darya, can you say a little bit about yourself to our listeners?
Well, I started in the field of organization development in the 70s. So it's been a long and fascinating and exciting, never a dull moment journey. And I began to focus on transformation in the 80s. So before it became a popular word or notion in in our regular lives, as well as in our organizational lives, I began to focus on and develop a system for transformation in the 1980s. And that's been even more exciting of a ride, I think, working both with individuals from all walks of life and also with executives and corporations and in the nonprofit social change world, all of which brings a lot of passion, commitment, and accelerated movement.
What distinguishes transformation from other concepts that people may be familiar with? Change management, transition. How do we start to conceptualize transformation?
Well, it's interesting because when I did a lot of research with different people whose work was recognized as transformative, whether they thought of themselves that way or not, from different paths like medicine or politics or spirituality or corporations, I found that one of there were a few distinguishing factors. One was that transformation is not incremental, and many people think of change as incremental, in whether they're talking about organizations or they're talking about themselves as individuals. They describe it in ways that indicate, small units of change, or the fact that it can all be all the interim aspects of it, from where you start to where you end up, could be planned. And transformation is not like that. All the interim bits are not necessarily planned. It's more like a leap from one reality into another. And so that's a distinguishing characteristic in my both practice and research and lived experience of transformation. It is also, it involves creating a totally different reality, not a delta version of the same reality that we're in. And that's a fundamental difference of transformation, the way I talk about it, like the caterpillar to the butterfly. We're familiar with transformation all around us in nature and in our lives. But when it comes to organizations or our own intentions, sometimes we think more cosmetically and more on the surface, whereas transformation really involves deep structure shifts in our ways of thinking and seeing the world, and in our ways of being and in our ways of doing things. Often a lot of the change that we attempt to make in organizations, I don't know about you, but I found a lot of times we're looking at something that's just on the surface. Where as I used to say, I started saying way back in the 80s that the ship may be going down and we're rearranging the chairs on the deck of the Titanic, and and that's changing the way we're doing something. We're not necessarily getting down deep in terms of the deepest aspects of our culture, our deepest beliefs that are driving the behaviors and values that are driving the behaviors as well, the emotions, the identity, who we identify with, who we identify as not being, all those things. They determine what's on the surface, and so or how the chairs are arranged. But to do transformation, we have to go deeper. We have to go into that and historically in organizations, the notion, this we can go back into the 50s and 60s and say, it's like, okay, you can ask me to behave a certain way at work, but keep your hands off my attitude. Keep your hands away from my attitude, keep your hands away from my beliefs, keep your hands away from all these things that are deeper structure, that govern a lot of the behavior, because in a sense, we acted as if, everybody could behave appropriately in line with, some shared vision or intentions, even if they had attitudes and beliefs and biases that were counter to the behaviors that we say we want.
Do you think we're in a transformative period now? I mean, as the world of work changes for many, and certainly it changes for those workers I just think about the Great Resignation. I think about the Big Quit. I think about how many people are not are choosing differently, and yet I don't know if we've identified yet what people are choosing, what employers will have to offer. And I'm curious: is this a transformative period now as we think about work, at least in the United States?
Oh, absolutely, and I'm thinking probably. Not just in the United States, we're in a transformative period because if you just look at the dynamics of COVID and you add that to the rapidly ever-changing modalities of technology, and then you look at COVID, I mean, that has just significantly changed so many things in work, where people are saying, I'm going to work at home. I'm not going back into the office, or I'm going to homeschool my children. They're not going back into, we have so many systems that are rapidly looking for which direction to go in order to fulfill their purposes and mission.
So this is an ideal,
amazing.
I would imagine this is an ideal time then for many leaders to work with a person such as yourself relative to transformation as he or she or they begin to think about how their groups evolve and their teams form and their organizations evolve and bring additional value into the world.
I think it is that moment, it is that period, it is that time. I think what you can see around you though is we still have some organizations who are trying to get back to normal, and they're like waiting. Is it going to be this summer? Is it going to be next summer when we can resume? A certain way of being, as opposed to saying, okay, how is this moment that we're in, going to alter the trajectory of everything, we had planned on doing and being, So, what's the impact on the larger scale of society, and how can we, jump ahead? How can we get ahead of the waves of change? That's one of the things that's significant. That's another finding that I had in the research on transformation, is that how significant it is for people who are either practitioners in transformation, like I am, or leaders in transformation, like I have been in certain leadership roles in organizations, to see ahead of the waves that are happening. We're always amidst the waves of change that are happening and coming. And 2020 vision is one thing, to be able to look back and say, oh, I see when that started happening. And or the people who saw their future, in a dimmer light, if they were making phone books when the internet came alive, and when the internet started growing, certain people started saying, there's going to be a change in phone books, if you're making phone books, right? And do you try to hold on, make the phone book more useful, or dress it up, or do you get into a line of business that's going to, reflect the technology of the internet?
Right. I think when I was still getting those yellow pages dumped off in the driveway, they went straight into the recycling bin. they never crossed the threshold.
That kept happening for a while. So that's part of what organizations sometimes do. And I think, and not just organizations, but we do it as human beings. We try to wait out the change and think we're going back to normal because of something that's happened. And I think, COVID is an invitation to a higher level of consciousness, to a different modalities and structures for work, and how we define work and how we get it done and how we're accountable, and all those things are happening. And I don't think they're temporary. I think we're reshaping the world of work. Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. As you know, I studied for a while with Bob Keegan and Lisa Leahy in their model of overcoming our immunities to change, because we get so conditioned, our success conditions us to engage in certain behaviors and avoid engaging in certain behaviors. And it's only when we're able to hold self out as object that we're able to begin a process. And Bob always described it as he thought we were eliminating a little bit of suffering in the world. And I've come to believe that it's something different. I think that what we're doing is we're bringing more happiness into the world. When I think about authenticity, I think about congruency. I think that my words and my actions match, and even better when my thoughts, words, and actions match, right? Attitudes, behaviors, cognitions. I'm wondering about the transformative process, given its nature, that by leaps, by not being incremental, by not working on small units of change, by not necessarily following a plan. What's the nature of congruency, of authenticity, of alignment in that work, maybe both in terms of process and in terms of outcome?
Well, I think, let me not say that there aren't. I mean, there are shades that happen. It's just that what people recognize for the most part is where they are now and what this other result is. It's an all of a sudden. It's like you're focused on a vision based on your mission, and you want those to be in alignment because the vision has not yet manifested itself on one hand. But from the physics standpoint, it is already here. You know what I mean? So it hasn't yet. It's not materialized in all the forms that are observable by everyone equally. But at another level in consciousness, it's already here. And the great visionary leaders who also work in transformation, for them, the vision is as real, as the tree is over there that I'm looking at from my window. And so that's authenticity. You're talking about as being congruent. Well, that would be like your actions align with your mission and your vision. Your actions, your words, and more importantly, even your underlying assumptions. Match with all match, and so that would be from a transformation standpoint. There's always some form of authenticity that that you are aspiring to, or integrity that you're aspiring to, and that you're lining up within yourself or tuning to. Whatever is the right word for you depends on whether you're doing it physically or in consciousness.
In some transformation work that I did, one of my teachers began with a question: if I was willing to suspend my belief systems as a way of thinking about the world and myself differently.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
exactly. I mean,
and maybe that's the distinction that we're making in all of this, right? In terms of vision versus how that congruency might just be another form of self-deception.
Well, I think you might suspend your belief systems when you choose to get on a transformational journey. You not only choose to suspend them, right? But you choose to dismantle them.
Yeah. And way back when, Peter Senge talked about that too in the fifth discipline, about suspending belief systems in order to move your disciplines.
Well, suspend your belief system is a technique used in literary, I think, for experience for forever, because that's part of what happens in writing. If you're writing fiction or you're writing mysteries or you're writing whatever, there is the talent of the writer, right, to get you to suspend your belief system, what you would think would be normal or would ordinarily happen, in order to get into whatever scenario they're taking you into. There's a suspension of belief on the part of the writer. Yeah.
Often in a coaching engagement designed to move closer towards goals of authentic and inclusive leadership, there's often a process that you're familiar with where you're doing contracting, you're helping to identify ways to collect information and data that inform. You're running some experiments. Is all of it? Does that take place more or less in transformative experiments, or maybe it's just that it's not as sequenced? Perhaps, I don't know. I'm curious about that.
Well, I sit down and work out an agreement, a contract with a client on behalf of that client system, just like anybody else does. I start with results, that they want, in relationship to it. So, so everything is anchored in those results, whatever we agree to, in relationship to this effort. Whatever we agree to is driven in some way by what it is they're attempting to create, this new reality that they're attempting to create. And it's going to be part of the work that they get aligned with, with those results in their own ways of seeing the world, in their beliefs, in their actions, in their values, in their reward systems, in their transactions and interactions, and all the above.
It can be
the thing that struck me when you're talking about that, though, is this notion of integrity, which is a very common challenge, because somewhere in our society and in organizations, we develop this whole notion that you don't bring your full self to work. And integrity is very much about that congruence. But historically, we have some. I used to ask people who were in the organization development field and in human resources. One of the first questions I would ask them, because I work with a lot of people who are internal practitioners, is, do you bring your whole self to work? And if so, how? And if not, why not? And they would look at me like I had lost my mind. And, like, who brings the whole self to work,
As you think about integrity, you do think about it as the genuine article, something of whole cloth.
Yeah, the genuine article.
Yeah.
The genuine article. Now, the organization is not interested in all of your fetishes and, your preferences and your orientations or whatever all the time. But they do want, to take advantage of your talents and skills and abilities, in service of the mission, right?
Yes, and often when I'm doing a presentation on integrity, and it's really about bringing more of who you are to what you do, one of the questions I always ask is, can you be yourself more at home or more at work? And the answer is predictable, right? And I always think about what, are we leaving on the table? And that takes us back to leadership and thinking about our huge selection problem, and at least again in the United States, of selecting people for leadership roles. As our colleague Warner Burke said, we have 60 years or 65 years now of social science that tells us that good technical skills don't equate to great leadership. And yet, it's still the predominant form for advancement. And, people like you and I are lucky enough to work with these technically smart people who generally have distinguished themselves by having some degree of interpersonal skills that many of their colleagues don't. And yet, I think are challenged by the topics of transformation for sure, and how to really incorporate, different planes and different universes of engineering and humanism to bring, what will hopefully be a better workplace where people feel loved, where they feel valued, where they both feel and are valued. And as you know, we're a long way from that. And this is where I think about transformation because I think in much of the change literature, we think about progress, right? Are we making progress? And of course, that's the way that I believe I'm conditioned to think about it. But transformation implies that leap, that we've moved somewhere differently, or we've brought ourselves closer to our vision.
Yes, we have an experience of the vision in action. We have experience of results that reflect the vision. In our transformation experience, because all these forces, for transformation are happening simultaneously. So while you're finally willing to, it's not just suspend your old beliefs, but part of the process is to really go into them and dismantle the ones that are no longer working for you or for the system or for anything else. So that's why transformation, involves transformation of culture in an organization as well. Because if you're really doing a transformation of the organization, the leadership and culture transformation becomes part of the work. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm increasingly thinking about communities as well, right? Communities.
Communities.
Yeah.
I'm very much involved in that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very much involved
communities
in that.
In addition to culture, right? That because so much happens in pairs and trios. And I think when we have that best friend at work feeling, which we know increases engagement, we know somebody has our back. We know somebody is there for us. And it's so critical to advancing progress at work. What are some of your current projects? What are you bringing to the world right now?
Ooh, that's a big question for opening the door here, Mike, for me to talk about all the different things I'm doing. I live in Washington State and have live on some land where there are some visions. I got here by virtue of a vision, so there's some visions of the still in motion of things to create here. I'm very interested in taking what I've learned and experienced about organizations and creating organizations and community and building different communities, like an eco village, that has businesses that are interdependent, to create pockets of community that are economically viable and prosperous, along with being grounded in principles of integrity, working from the heart, doing sustainable work, using sustainable and creating sustainable products and things that do good in the world, and doing business based on doing good things in the world. So I'm very much interested in new models of business that are regenerative, that close gaps in wealth equity, health equity, racial equity, educational equity, and beginning to create communities that can help do that. So I'm very much interested in that. So I have some things going that have to do with that. I'm also developing other people as transformational practitioners. So I have a project that does that, that's pretty much grounded right now in one state, Connecticut, but I'm looking at doing a second cohort and opening it wider than that. So developing more people in the work to work with me and that I can work with to expand what's possible. And developing a spiritual center too, for where different talk about integrity. Integrity has to do with wholeness, and so I'm always looking at where have we created separations that are false, and so where have we created separations that interfere with our ability to innovate, create, work across, different differences that we may have. And I think one of them is the things we have in common across different faiths, that if we got rid of some of those separations, we'd be more in touch with the gifts that we carry as human beings, the capacities that we have in consciousness that we're not even using yet. So,
and perhaps able to approach our truths so that
yes.
We advance integrity. I think so much of it has to do with trust. What I believe is that if I don't think you have integrity, I won't trust you. And if I don't trust you, I won't think you have integrity. I know those things are true for most people, for many people. and since I work with people on the topic of integrity, and I resonate with your approach, the whole cloth, the genuine article. It is, working on Jung's idea that the greatest gift in life is becoming more of who you are. And that, in order to make progress, you got to accept the current state. He made that observation as well. So, we get to work on this great gift. His third observation in this regard as well is that you are what you do, not what you say you'll do. So, putting all of that together paints or provides a pathway, I hope, for the leaders with whom I work to get in touch with themselves, their teams, the communities they work with, so that they're able to bring a word that you used, which I don't often hear, prosperity. And to bring that, forth. So I think that is in some ways the work of, the work that we do in integrity development. It's really not about, should I tell a lie or can I tell a lie? Because I can't answer that for anyone. But what I can say is that when people aren't, when I've observed managers who aren't truthful, it doesn't develop trust easily. And trust is so much at the foundation of, I think, and that's what I was wondering as you were speaking. I was wondering, in transformation work, what is the element of trust? Where does trust sit? Because in authentic leadership, it underpins the interpersonal relationship and team performance.
Well, I think it sits two places. It's essential to being able to move effectively together. If you're going to take a leap in transformation work, sometimes you don't have the confidence that the people have who are more bringing forth the vision, so to speak. But you do know if they believe it, if they really believe it. I found that people can tell that difference. I've had people say to me before in times, they say, well, I'm not sure about that result, but I can tell that you believe it, and I can feel it when I listen to you. Do you think everybody believed, Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech vision that was really believing in that? People who even wanted what he wanted, many were skeptical. Okay. So, but what they did know was that he fully believed it, and that that's what they did know, that he believed it. And that's part of what, is a trust. Not that there's one single hero or one single leader. That's not the leadership model per se. but that we develop our capacity, and this is the second place I think trust sits, to trust ourselves and our own discernment. So if there is some trust, I may not be trusting you if I don't think you have integrity, right? But I know that I can trust you to do what you do, right?
Yes.
I know that I can trust you to be who you are. And I have a poem that I wrote about that, about to say, that you may not be trusting. I can't trust you to keep my best interests at heart or anything like that, but I can trust you to be who you are. And I need to trust myself to be able to discern who you are, which is one of the essential 3 gifts that I've written about, as you know, 3 gifts of the organization development practitioner. They're really 3 gifts of humanity that we have within us, the ability to, the gift of heart, the gift of discernment, the gift of presence. And so I think, it's both how much do I trust myself to perceive things accurately, and then 2, how much, what do I perceive in you and in myself? Where is the integrity? Because everybody has that piece of work to do, to work on their own integrity, to find out where they're disingenuous, as opposed to authentic, to find out. And I would use the word lie. I mean, we have, that's a big challenge for us in our society. It's like buyer beware. It's like you can lie in advertising, right? we get permission for that, and we say buyer beware. We get permission for everybody to lie. In the business world, so you have to have some discernment, and we're right at that transformative point. In our history, processing all this information about politics, about vaccinations, about COVID, about everything. Everybody's processing all this information to get at whatever resonates as true for them. What they will follow, what they can trust. And for some people, that reduces down to something similar, like I'll trust people who are like me, or I'll trust people who have the same politics, or I'll trust people, it goes like that. It goes into a question of identity instead of real true discernment about the integrity or authenticity or truthfulness of whatever information we come in contact with. So we're in such a big transformational moment, for all of us, that if we started really looking into that truth, and looking into what has integrity within ourselves and what doesn't, and working that forward, inside out job, we got it going on. We have movement happening.
Requiring, again, a belief that things can be different.
Things can be different, exactly, as opposed to, you're right, as opposed to the belief that no matter what I do, it's pointless. But that's one, the belief in the ability to create a different reality is fundamental, even something that a lot of change agents and consultants have to wrestle with, because some people get up in the morning and do this work called organizational change, but don't really believe that things will change.
Yeah. And I think, if anything, this recent period of time has brought us is the idea it is about embracing uncertainty. And in the face of uncertainty, as you know, I mean, people make it up, right? It used to be about the prediction of outcomes and the management of outcomes. And I think the success now, and perhaps this is where transformational spirit at least lies, is embracing uncertainty and what we do with it, so that we go on our learning journeys, we go on our progress journeys, we are able to bring more of who we are to what we do.
We bring more of who we are to what we do. Mm-hmm. And like I say, I still start out with outcomes. And I think they are uncertain, but the process that I use, people usually get the outcomes that they're looking for, plus some other stuff that they didn't have in mind. And so, and And that's not about controlling other people. It's about, doing that for yourself, being able to work with timing.
Well,
as you say, suspend your beliefs, but also shift.
And to be graced by so much that you are doing in life, as a poet, as a writer, as a scholar, as an author, as a transformer. It's great to be around this kind of energy. If people wanted to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
Well, my website is reapunlimited.com. REAP is in Peter, unlimited, all together is one thing, .com. So they can go to the website. They can, you also find different talks that I do on spiritual topics. Find me at unitycentralia.net. Centralia is a Western Washington town, CENTRALIA. And I'm creating some new organizations where I don't have the websites up yet, but there are two nonprofits people can look forward to seeing. Having some dialogues under one, an initiative called Circle America, where we're having some dialogues on race and creating leadership for equity in America. So it's Circle America. That's one of the initiatives under one of the nonprofits I'm starting, So Reap Futures. And then I'm starting a spiritual center. And as soon as I get all those things up on websites and interface with all the media formats that we have to work with in the world, I will let you know.
It's a beautiful thing. And in the meantime, we can find out about you and your services at reapunlimited.com as a great place to visit. Also, an active LinkedIn site, Darya Funches, Dr. Darya Funches. Please visit her at reapunlimited.com. And it's just been a delight for me, Darya, to have an opportunity to have you in the studio today on Authentic Change. I think really challenging the notions that we have about change and transformation, and such a rich conversation of distinguishing concepts, thinking about application, and doing it in a way that invites us to engage in this topic in a friendly and accessible way. Thank you so much, Dr. Darya Funches, reapunlimited.com. It's just been a great pleasure to have you today in the studio. Thank you.
It's always great to spend time with you, Mike. It's
great.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Darya Funches. And until the next episode of Authentic Change with Mike Horne, stay well. Thanks for listening. And I hope you'll subscribe today and tell a friend about our show. If you're looking for hands-on help to increase your success through authentic change, or have a question you'd like to hear me answer here, please email me at mike@mike-horne.com.